Hey, Redemption family, we are here with you today, and we want to talk about something very exciting. You've heard us talk about the Tell City expansion project, and we now are getting to the point where we're getting ready to really get in it. And we have something called 100 People for 100 Hours that we're introducing, and I have with us the project manager for the Tell City project. Mike is a member here at church, and he's leading that project. And I'd like for him to explain just a little bit what this 100 for 100 is all about.
Well, thank you, Daryl. It's wonderful to be here with you this morning, and we're getting very excited about transacting some construction work on the site at Tell City. But the first thing we want to do is to get the building cleaned up, and we've been asked by many people about how they might volunteer. Mm-hmm. And so getting things ready for the construction, which will actually physically be happening in the fall, we've decided to ask for volunteers, and primarily in the trades, but who have been around construction. Mm-hmm. We'd like to get 100 people that would like to contribute 100 hours of their time. Rather than doing just a few work weekends, we would like to spread this out over a 4-month period. We'll schedule around people's availability to work. The trades that we're looking for, first and foremost, is going to be cleaning. We've got a huge campus. We really know and understand the building now, what we're going to accomplish in this first phase of development and then the following 2 stages. So cleaning is going to be a big effort, and people that can volunteer. Then on the form, we have a form that has these different trades or these different skills that we're looking for. We'll have helpers who are willing to contribute in any way they can. And then we're going to be looking for some crew leaders, some people who have construction experience of leading crews, teams to make things happen. Then into the conventional trades, we're going to do a lot of demo with tradespeople. We'll be doing carpenters, some electricians, HVAC, tile work, concrete work.
Everything from painting to all those kinds of things will be available. And we just really think this is an exciting thing because we want that sweat equity, so to speak. This is our church, our project, and we want people involved with it. It doesn't just save us money and help us out, which it does those things, but it really gets us invested in this project. People always want to know how they can help, and this is a great way to help. And so we're going to have them signing up over the next 3 Sundays, correct? Explain that time.
Well, there'll be 2 ways to sign up. One is there'll be an application form at the Next Step hubs in all 3 campuses, and starting today, and then today, next Sunday, and then the 31st, so all 3 Sundays. Or through the online app, there will be ability to sign up there.
Okay, and the idea is that you are going to fulfill your 100 hours within a 4-month period, correct?
Correct. So we'll be starting right away in June, July, August, September. There are some people, some people say, oh, I'd like to help, but I'm not available in July at all. Fine with us. Mm-hmm. Or any other weeks that you're not available. We'll be working individually with each volunteer in terms of putting work times and project times that work with their schedule. We'll be having crews working during the day and the week. We'll have some people that are only able to work in the evenings during the week, and then weekend work as well.
Yeah, and then right off the bat, we've purchased some property adjacent with our church property where we're going to be building a parking lot, and there's some needs there.
Yeah, the biggest one starting out is we're going to be needing to take a lot of the trees down. We're going to have to do some dirt work and so forth. And unfortunately, the trees are in very, very poor shape. So we're going to do a clean sweep with that. So if we've got people, lumberjacks, we're going to have people, professionals, take these trees down. But once they're down, people that have done lumber work to help get those removed. And then we've got some buildings that if we get the right tradesmen in our team, we will be maybe doing a little bit of that work too.
Okay.
The other thing is that on the application form it says, and we are looking for if the people have industrial tools or equipment, mm-hmm. Maybe if somebody has a high lift or a dump truck, industrial crane, we're going to be setting some HVAC units on the roof downstream, and for sure in the congregation there are people that know, they say, well, I've got the stuff they need, and right. I would be willing to volunteer that. So on the form, we'd be looking for those kind of contributions as well.
Yeah, so lots of ways to use your time, your talents, and your treasure for this project, and we're looking forward to it. So check out Next Steps Hubs if you want to know more, and we'll be letting you know a little bit more about it, but we're ready to get started.
Well, Good morning, Jasper, Tell City, Lagoda. Good to be with you all today. My first time to Southern Indiana, absolutely incredible. Like the beauty is unreal. And I know, how can it be your first time to Southern Indiana? I know you're probably offended by that. But hey, you don't get to go everywhere. I've flown through, and I've driven through a bunch going from St. Louis to visit my son and daughter-in-law that live in Louisville, Kentucky. She's a surgeon there, wrapping up a residency. You know, we kind of drove by the French Lick sign on our way, but didn't really get off the highway a whole lot. And I'm just telling you, like, you get off the highway, this place is beautiful. Like, it's amazing. I was telling my wife last night, I was like, Southern Indiana is like, it's legit. Like, it's a gorgeous space. So, man, yeah, you guys have picked a great place to live. Man, I'm going to come to you today as an optimist, to be honest with you. I'm seeing some things that I've not seen in decades. And you can tell by the gray of my beard, I've been around for a minute or two. And some of the stuff that I'm seeing go on among the church, and especially among the next generation, is absolutely unbelievable. I mean, what you're seeing play out right now, if you've not heard the stories of what's happening on college campuses around the nation right now, with thousands and thousands of kids turning to Christ like no other time in history, it truly is amazing. And we're going to talk about that. But I want to give something really practical, all right? Before you leave here this morning, I want you to leave with 3 sentences and 1 question that's going to help you be prepared for what's going on, not just in college campuses, but what we see happening, not just in spaces like Ohio State, or what happened at Auburn, or even, what just happened down at Southeastern, or you've heard the story of what happened at, just campuses all over where thousands of kids are coming to Christ. I want to have you leave here with something really practical, which is really just three sentences and 1 question to help you be prepared for those moments. I can tell you at CIY, we work with students from coast to coast, from California to Florida, from, you could go from Washington all the way down to Florida, and from Michigan down to Texas. And in the last 5 years, we've grown by 45,000 students in 5 years. This year alone, we're going to see over 90,000 young people. And I'm telling you, man, something's happening in this generation that I've not seen in decades. It's absolutely incredible. And Barna is saying that might be one of the most evangelistic generations we've ever seen. But that means something for us, man. We have got to be prepared. We all as individuals, whether we are adults in this room or whether we're students in this room, we've got to be prepared. Peter gives us this word. It comes from 1 Peter chapter 3, verse 15. It says, "But in your hearts receive Christ as Lord. Always be prepared to give an answer to everyone who asks you, to give a reason for the hope that you have, but do this with gentleness and respect." Because of what we're seeing play out in our country, because of the thousands of students coming to Christ like no other time we've seen in history, really since the late 1960s, early 1970s, we're seeing something break. And I'm not ready to say it's a revival, but I am ready to say it's something special. And if you followed on the news and you've paid attention, it is revolutionary what's happening in our society right now. And I think it's time for us as individuals within the church to make sure that we're prepared to be contributors to what God's doing. Part of the reason why I think Peter says be prepared is because he sees this play out in the life of Jesus. He watches Jesus have these amazing interactions with people, and then those people leave and they've got a story to share. The 2 great examples of that. One comes from Mark chapter 5, where Jesus meets this guy that's fully demon-possessed. I mean, if you know the story in Mark chapter 5, Jesus takes a boat ride across through a terrible storm. They land, I think it's sometime like midnight to 2 a.m. As soon as the disciples get off the boat, you can imagine you're landing midnight to 2 a.m., the boat actually, where it beaches, is kind of in an area that's basically a cemetery. Like, that's not a place I want to arrive at like midnight to 2 a.m., but they arrive at a cemetery. And then at that point, this guy comes screaming at them out of these tombs like they didn't know. Then not only does the guy come screaming at you in the middle of the night, but he's not wearing any clothes. He's completely naked. He's screaming, losing his mind. And if you know the story of this guy, he's actually got demons within his whole, like he's completely possessed by them. And this is the guy that's isolated himself in the tombs because he's been run out of the city. He's cutting himself with stones. They've sent people out to chain him. Like, who gets that job? Not signing up for that one. Who wants to go chain the naked guy that's screaming in the tombs? But they've tried to chain him. Nothing can chain him. They've tried to isolate him. Nothing can isolate him. And here you are in the middle of the night. You're off the boat. A guy comes screaming and yelling at you. I mean, that's the power of sin. That's what it does. It isolates. It escalates. And honestly, man, nothing human can contain it. And that's what you find in this man. And he runs up to Jesus, falls on his knees before Jesus. And Jesus begins this encounter with him. And you can read the whole story in Mark chapter 5, but I love how it ends. Like, it ends with this man submitting to Jesus, Jesus fully removing those demons from his life. And I love this line it says, Jesus leaves the man dressed and in his right mind. I mean, what a beautiful thing. Dressed and in his right mind. And then this guy does what I would do. I mean, he says, he looks at Jesus like they're going to go get back on the boat in his mind. He looks at him and says, hey man, can I go with you? And Jesus is like, no, you can't. I mean, that had to hurt a little bit. You know, here you are, you'd been naked, cut yourself with stones. People have been chaining you. You're living among the tombs, living in caves. Like, all you want to do is you got finally the first person who actually didn't isolate you, that actually didn't try to harm you, has actually brought you help and healing. And you want to just, can I just go with you? Like, I feel like I'm dressed and I'm in my right mind, in my mind again. And Jesus is like, no, you can't do that. In Mark chapter 5, Jesus says this to him. He says, go home to your own people and tell them how much the Lord has done for you and how he's had mercy on you. And if you know this guy's story, he goes to a place called the Decapolis. All that means, it's a region of 10 different cities, all right? 10 different cities that surround it. They call that region the Decapolis. He goes back to those cities. And what's interesting is 2 chapters later, if you read the book of Mark, Jesus actually comes back to this region. And this time when he comes back, he's not there to meet one single man who's naked and in the tombs and demon possessed. No, when Jesus comes back, thousands of people line up at the shore to meet Jesus. Why? Because 2 chapters later, what this man had done is he had moved through his entire city and told the story through city after city after city about what Jesus had done in his life. And everything changed for those 10 cities because they heard one man's story. Well, Peter knows that. It's why he says, always be prepared to give an answer for the hope that you have. And that's what the demoniac did. But it's not just a demoniac. One day Jesus shows up at a well. There's a woman there. And by the time the story ends, you see in John chapter 4, she's running back to her town to say this, come and see a man who told me everything I ever did. Man, I don't know about you, but I doubt that I'd be wanting to run back in and tell the story. Let me introduce you to somebody who told you everything I've ever done, okay? Like, if they're gonna play that on the screen behind me, I'm gonna exit, stage left right now. But her story is like, no, I want you to meet the man who told you, he can tell you everything I ever did. But if you understand her story, she goes to the well in the middle of the day, and that's not when women would go to the well to get water. She went to be alone because she was a complete outcast, and the other ladies were treating her like terrible. Part of the reason they treated her terrible is that her reputation was terrible. I mean, everything about her was just incredibly difficult. And she had a life where she just didn't fit in anymore. And she was isolated. And she was kind of an outcast in her own community. And Jesus meets her and he's like, I know everything you've ever done. And he says, I just want to have a conversation with you. And as this unpacks, she comes to the well, he says, I know your story. I know that you've had 5 husbands and the man you're living with is not your husband right now. And then Jesus says, could I have a drink? He asks this woman for a drink. And he's like, wait, a man would never ask this woman for a drink? And like, what do you mean? And he ultimately says, well, I'm not just talking about water. I want to give you a living water. And what he does in this woman's life in that conversation is he begins to redeem all of her story. It's not about getting a drink from a well anymore. It's about giving her something that transforms her heart. And this woman says, man, I came here for water from a well, but I'm leaving here like with a real deeper thirst that isn't quenched by H2O, like something deep inside of me, a need has been met. And this guy had a conversation with me that's actually changed my heart. And now I realize that I've been given something that I can't hold to myself. And when Jesus finished talking, she had a story to tell. And in fact, it says many of the Samaritans, John chapter 4, verse 39, she goes back into her city. And this woman who's once isolated and alone at a well that felt like she was an outcast and no one wanted to talk to her, no one wanted to be around her. She felt like she couldn't fit into the other ladies around her, that she'd had 5 husbands and they probably all lived in the area. And the man she's living with now isn't her own. And everybody knows she's just kind of this pariah. She's this outcast that nobody wants to be around. But when she meets Jesus at this well and he quenches a thirst so deep in her that like it changes everything. I mean, in that moment, well, John 4 says this, many of the Samaritans from that town believed him because of the woman's testimony. Stories change communities. Stories always grow. I mean, we understand the importance of this. I think the Psalms understood this. The obligation for us to pass down or pass, to one another the stories Psalms talks about this. It says in Psalm 78, it says, we will not hide them from their descendants. We will tell the next generation the praiseworthy deeds of the Lord, his powers and the wonders he's done. I mean, part of what Psalms is talking about, the importance of us conveying the stories. I know when you get at my house and we're having a conversation, my kids will tell stories one after another about things I've said and things I've done. And man, as a dad, I've got them. My kids can do a whole routine at our house about we are the family that eats our crust. Okay, that's a long story about me getting on my kids for cutting the crust off their bread. We all have those in our families, you know, when everyone gets together like, oh, it's story time. You know what I mean? We have those. I love what Psalm 145 says. One generation commends your works to another. They tell of your mighty acts. One generation commends to another. They tell of your mighty acts. You know, the cool thing about that is it doesn't say which generation's telling the other. It doesn't say that the older generation will tell the younger generation or the younger generation will tell the older generation. It just says that one generation commends to another. And I think it's important that we recognize, man, that story flows both ways and it always has. But it's more than a family tradition of we're the family that eats our crust. And it's more than a generational obligation. I think it's way richer than that because in Revelation, we get a scene that reframes everything about the importance of you actually opening your mouth and sharing the story of what God's done in and through you. Like, I want you to understand the power of what happens because if you realize that your mouth, your words, your heart, your life are actually a part of spiritual warfare. I love what it says in Revelation chapter 12, verse 11. It says this, Satan is having this ongoing argument with God. I mean, it's ongoing disagreement that's happened between Satan and Yahweh. And in this, it says, they triumphed over him by the blood of the Lamb and the word of their testimony. They triumphed over him, meaning Satan, by the blood of the Lamb and the word of their testimony. They did not love their life so much as shrink from death. John puts two things in the same sentence. They overcame, we overcome, you overcome by the blood of the Lamb and the word of your testimony. The blood of the Lamb is the legal status, man. That's that moment in a court proceeding where the blood of the Lamb is the evidence that stacks up and says, no, here it is. This is the evidence. And we overcome because of the blood of the Lamb. Here is the evidence. Your testimony is the witness. As if you've been called up on the stand, you say, not only can you see the evidence, but now in this court proceeding, your voice, your life, the way that you handle trials, the way that you handle obstacles, the way that you can speak like the demoniac, the way that you can speak like the woman at the well, when you give testimony to that, man, in that moment, you're the expert witness as to what Jesus has done in your life, your holy life, your endurance in difficult times, your faithful testimony. You show that you belong to Christ and you silence an enemy. And I would tell you right now in Revelation's language, your words, your speaking, you telling your story, it is a weapon of spiritual warfare. And when you open your mouth and see what God has done for you, you're doing something in the invisible realm that you cannot fully see. Understand that when you give the testimony of what God's done in you, you do something in the invisible realm before a holy God that all of a sudden silences this accuser. Every time in your workspace, every time in your home, every time in your school system, you have to understand that your words echo, not just reverberate through sound waves. No, they pierce even the veil of heaven. And in that moment when the accuser is coming against and he's speaking to holy God, your words come into that courtroom and they echo around and God says, there is my witness to what my son has done. Do you understand what your words do? Your words are spiritual warfare. And we see this. And I think what happens in this room and in our lives, it's so significant. There's a young man, even from this church, his name's Caden, didn't feel like he fit in. The lack of community in his life had created a cycle of bad decisions and loneliness for him. He went to CIY, which is an event that we do for students. Again, we'll have like 90,000 students this year. Caden is one story of 90,000 kids being transformed by the gospel. But as he comes home, he realizes that he needed something different. He built a routine of like Bible study, prayer, made himself available for God to speak, and God did. One night, he's reading his Bible by a lake. He asks God to show him a sign. God takes this light that's like sitting there all stable. All of a sudden, it starts to flicker, and in that moment, God gives him a sign that he hears him. The next thing you know, he's got something to hold on to, and then all of a sudden, Caden's being baptized, man. God's doing a transformational work in his life. Man, he's committed himself fully to seeking Jesus in that space. He's caught up now in a cycle of community, not a cycle of loneliness. He's encountered Jesus, and now he has a word of testimony that he can share with other people. I mean, this is what's happened. My question is, do you have a story like Caden's? Do you have a story like that? He comes home from camp to realize that man, not only does he have a story, but he's in a church, a community called Redemption, with people who have stories just like his. And this summer, we're gonna see students, thousands of them, come through our events, and they need to come home and meet adults like you and other students in this room who also can say, I've got the same story. I bear witness alongside you. They can say, man, I used to be this way and now I'm this way. And because of Jesus, I believe this. Do you have a story like that? I want to get really practical right now in our last little time here. Peter says that we've got to be prepared. And so let's work on this together. We're going to take a turn. It's your first time at Redemption. I want to tell you that we don't always do things like this in the room, okay? I'm about to get a little bit, I'm not going to make you super uncomfortable, but it's going to be a little bit different than what you might be used to. If you've got your phones, you might want to pull them out and open up your notes app right now, okay? And I want to kind of walk you through, because the main thing between the guy in the tombs, the woman in the well, and a kid like Caden is, man, they didn't just have a statement prepared. I'm not going to just give you something rehearsed. What they had was something that was true. What they had was something that had transformed them. They'd met Jesus in a special way, and when they met him in that space, everything changed. And so you're gonna know exactly what to do when you find yourself in that situation. Because we find ourselves in situations like that all the time. We're talking to somebody that's going through difficulty in their marriage, and we say, oh, I'll pray for you. And we sense deep down inside, well, that's powerful. And sometimes the words feel painfully short, you know what I mean? Or you see something on Facebook and they make a post, or maybe you're walking through, your work and you know someone's going through a hard time. Hey, man, I'll pray for you. And you say that, but inside something in your mind says, man, I wish I could do more. Or you watch one of your kids going through something, or maybe you just need to testify to your own children, your own husband, your own wife about the good things that God's doing, and you want to share it, but you don't know how to articulate it. I want to give you something really practical. And it really comes down into 3 sentences, 1 question. We're going to post those on the screen. I'm going to leave them up there for just a minute so you can write those down while I talk. And it really comes down to this, okay? Really, 3 statements, 1 question. Here we go. Number 1, we're going to talk about the word before, okay? So you can write that word down somewhere. Put it in your phone notes right now. It'd be great because you're going to want this later on. In fact, you're going to do something with it here in a little bit, so probably good if you're writing it down. Then we're going to talk about this turn, okay? What happened? Where was the turn? Where did things change? And then we're going to talk about what was it like after, all right? And then finally, we're going to kind of open the door with just a simple question, okay? Here's what it looks like in my life. And I would say you can just give your testimony. You can share your faith in 15 seconds. That's the goal. Can you share your faith in 15 seconds? Now, I'm not saying you can present the full gospel in 15 seconds. That's not what I'm getting at. But sometimes sharing your faith is just giving testimony of the good things God has done. I can share what mine is. Man, there was a time in my life where before I was in a situation where my wife was diagnosed with cancer. And I didn't know what I was going to do. I was scared out of my ever-loving mind. And for me, Jesus met me. Here's the turn. Jesus met me in that space, and he sat with me, and he told me he had me, and he told me he was going to be near. And because of that, I know that any situation that I'm in, Jesus is going to walk with me. That's the after. And so I don't have fear anymore. Do you have a story like that? There it is, 15 seconds. Like it just allows you in a moment when you're with somebody that's going through a tough time, how do you share your testimony? Again, 15 seconds. There was a time in my life where I was sitting with my wife. She was navigating cancer and I felt alone. I felt afraid and I didn't know what to do. And Jesus met me in that space and he told me, I've got you and I'm with you and you're going to be okay and we can get through this. I mean, after that, what I know is no matter what I'm going through, Jesus has me and he's with me. Do you have a story like that? Okay, I want to train you this morning, something really practical that you can use. But listen, you're not preaching a sermon, you're just opening a conversation, and you're going to always end with, do you have a story like that? Because the issue is not just you talking to someone, it's inviting conversation. You got to always end with that door, which is now, do you have a story like that? So here we go. I'm going to show you how we can do this in real time. I don't know who it is, but I've been told I got a volunteer in the room that's willing to come up and do this. Promise you, this is not staged. I don't know who it is. Come on up, wherever you are. I don't know. Okay. You're coming up? Come on up. We're going to do this in real time, like right now. She's never done this, okay? Have we worked on this at all? Nope. Not at all. All right. So 15 seconds, all right? You don't have to get real wordy. And part of the thing why I'd say 15 seconds is probably nobody wants to walk somebody like, I'm talking for like 30 minutes today. Nobody wants to hear somebody go on for 45 minutes. You're like, okay, how do I get out of this conversation? So 15 seconds, all right? That's all we're targeting here. Have you ever had a time in your life where you're going through something difficult?
I have.
Right. Don't even go into it. You just hold
I
on to
have.
it. I'm going to ask you a question. I want you to think about, you got it?
Yep.
Okay, what were 2 words that you would use to describe that time, how you felt?
Lonely and isolated.
All right, so just kind of say what it was and just say, there was a time in my life I was going through this and I felt lonely and isolated.
There was a time in my life when I lost 2 very best friends within 6 months of each other, and I felt very lonely and isolated.
All right, there you go. And my next question is, we get into this word up here, the turn. Is there a spot where Jesus showed up in that?
Then I had some, yes. Do you want me
No,
to just say yes, or do you want me to say
No,
it?
that's great.
Then I had friends who pulled at me, and family pulled at me to get me out of that isolation and loneliness.
All right, and after that, what did you learn about Jesus and all that?
I learned that Jesus comes sometimes in the form of community when you least expect it.
Okay, and so now you did with it, now do you have a story like that? So put that all together.
So at that time, I recognized the community of how important that is. And so I now work really hard to make sure that other people have community. And I filled myself with community
All right,
as well.
here we go. Here's your testimony in 15 seconds. Okay, you're going to say something along the lines of, there was a time in my life where I lost 2 really good friends. And I felt lonely and isolated. After that, Jesus showed up in community. He met my needs. Like, you feel it. Like, go ahead and say it. Let's hear you do it.
So there was a time in my life when I lost 2 very best friends. I felt lonely and isolated. God placed people in my life to pull me through that and to surround me. And I recognized that that was Jesus at work. And now I try to be those hands and feet for other people during those times.
And now do you have a story like that?
Now, do you have a story like that?
What's your name?
Jody.
Jody, you crushed that.
Thanks.
That's amazing. Come on now. Well done. That's it.
Okay, thank you.
Like, do you see how easy that was? And I mean, you can imagine that you're in a situation at work, you're in a situation when you're navigating somebody you care about, and you know that your heart, like the demoniac, like the one of the wells, has been transformed, but you just don't know how to articulate that. You just like, how do I share what God has done? And I think we all understand that stories transform. Stories make all the difference. So for me, man, I've got different stories. I can tell one about a time in our marriage. I can tell one about raising adult kids and navigating things with my son. I can tell you about another son that's gone through some really hard times and made some difficult decisions. I can tell you in business, man. I do live events, and in COVID, we lost $20 million in about 15 minutes is what it felt like, okay? Because we do live events. And I can tell you as a business leader what it feels like to have that absolute anxiety and releasing staff. I can tell you stories of like when I broke my neck mountain biking. Like, the story evolves and changes based on the situation. Does that make sense? You can have one that relates to family, one that relates to business, one that relates to parenting, one that relates to health. Like, there's all kinds of spaces. The issue is, can you be prepared? Peter says this, always be prepared to give an answer for the hope that you have. I think part of it is we've just never really focused on the being prepared part. Does that make sense? So we're gonna do it right now. Pull your phones out. All right, here we go. This is you and I doing this right now. So pull your phones out. Here's what I want you to do. Oh, in your notes app, I want you to think about a time in your life, and I'm not going to ask you to walk up on stage, I promise. Think about a time in your life that was difficult. Got it? Got a spot that was a little bit hard? What maybe a couple of emotions you felt in that season? Write them down. Just a couple of words. I don't want to give you those words right now because I want them to come from the Holy Spirit. Write down 2 words you felt. All right, and I want you to think of a time when Jesus showed up in the middle of all that. Kind of that turn, like, yeah, I felt this, but then Jesus showed up. And here's the turn. Jesus showed up, and he showed me this. Go ahead and type it into your phone. Write it down. All right, now in that last sentence, you know what we get to the very end of it is just kind of the after. Like, what is it you know now about Jesus? And then you always end with that last question. Do you have a story like that? Because the ultimate goal is for you to open the door for conversation. Just to get the conversation started. To start spiritual conversations. That's all we're trying to do here. We're not trying to talk to somebody for 20 minutes. We're just trying to open up the door. Like, do you want to talk about this? Because I can tell you every day when I'm at a travel baseball game, well, my son plays high school ball now, but I might be at one of his wrestling matches, we might be at a baseball match, we might be at one of his football games, and I'm talking to dads, talking to parents, and sometimes sit in the stands, conversations open up. People become real, and they start sharing what's going on. And you kind of wonder, like, how could I open the door about what God's done? But a lot of times we're just not prepared. All right, how many of you guys have one anybody got, I'm not gonna make commitment, I'm not gonna read it from the room, okay? Anybody here able to write one? Okay. Show me hands. Anybody able to get one written? Okay, great. So here's kind of what I want to get at right now. Everybody has, if you're a believer, man, everyone's got a testimony. Every person in this room at some point, man, you've had Jesus. If you follow Jesus, he's done something real in your life. We're going to take just a few seconds here. I won't take a long time. For those of you who have one, if you didn't write one, we're going to let you off the hook right now. But if you wrote one and you're willing to do it, I'm just going to set it for 90 seconds. I want you to turn to the person next to you and you tell them like your 15-second testimony, and then we'll allow them to look back and tell you yours. If you're at, if you're one of the other campuses, just you guys can do the same thing while you're watching. But let's take just about 90 seconds in the room and let's try this real quick. You can't mess it up, man. It's your story. Like you can't screw it up. So don't get worried about it. You're just gonna say, man, there's a time in my life I felt this and it made me feel this. Jesus showed up and he met me and this is what happened. And because of that, I know this is the truth. Do you have a story like that? Okay? 3 statements, 1 question. All right, do that real quick. I'm just gonna stand here for 90 seconds. It's gonna be really awkward. But turn to each other, go ahead and do it. Okay, I think I'm gonna go back 60 seconds. I can't do 90. I tried, man. It's just the awkward silence, even for me and for you. You're like, is that guy ever gonna talk again? Here's the deal, man. You are not responsible for the outcome of your story, but you are responsible for telling it. Hear that again. You're not responsible for the outcome of your story, but you are responsible for telling it. And if a demoniac can tell a story and a woman of the well can tell hers, you can tell yours. If they can, you can. And that's the challenge right now is that, man, understanding that the word of your testimony echoes in the very throne room of God and silences the accuser about your life. Understand the power of your words. Man, that should help you overcome any bit of nervousness. And part of the nervousness we have about sharing our faith is that we just don't know what to say. Now you do. You know exactly what you do. You just simply open up with 15 seconds and you say, man, I was once going through this and I felt this and I met Jesus and he did this in my life. And since then, I know this. Do you have a story like that? And just open up the conversation. And then you're like, well, yeah, but what if they say, yeah, I do have a story. What if they want to talk more? Then you just ask the Holy Spirit to give you what you need to say next. And you just lean into that moment. But man, what's happening so many times is our silence is deafening to the kingdom. And at this point, one of our goals at CIY is we're trying to train 300,000 students to do this right now. Can you imagine training up 300,000 students who can share their faith in 15 seconds and then also coming alongside them and actually also equipping them to not just share their faith, but training them to also share the gospel as well? I think those can be a little bit distinct because sometimes sharing your faith is not even just with a person who's a not yet believer. Sometimes the most powerful testimony is to a fellow believer because their heart is discouraged. Man, some of those powerful things that's happened in my life is when somebody came alongside and told me. So here's your assignment. You just wrote 3 lines, okay, and 1 question. I want to know, do you have a coworker that you know their world is falling apart? Do you have a neighbor that you know is going through something tough? Or maybe the next time somebody just asks you how you're doing and you know you've got 15 seconds to honestly answer that question when somebody says, how are you? I can tell you I am. So time of my life, I was going through some hard things. But here lately, I've really found peace in what Jesus is doing in my life. He showed up in the midst of difficulties and he's actually transforming me. And I found a peace that allows me to tell you right now, I'm not just doing fine, I'm doing great. Do you have a story like that? 15 seconds. But it's more than just saying, I'm fine. You know what I mean? It gives you the chance for somebody to step away and go, wow, that was actually a rich answer. That was actually something that they walk away going, that might be a person I want to talk to someday. Now listen, you have no idea what God's going to do with it. One story opened 10 cities. The woman of the well, she never preached a sermon. She was the first evangelist in the book of John, but she never preached a sermon. She just opened her mouth. And understand this in Revelation chapter 12, verse 11. They triumphed over him. You triumph over Satan by the blood of the Lamb and the word of your testimony. Jesus, we come before you and we pray that you would give us the courage to open our mouths. We pray, Jesus, that the word of our testimony would flow freely from our lips, knowing that it echoes through eternity as a weapon of spiritual warfare, Lord. So, Lord, let us unleash our tongues. Let us unleash our hearts. Let us not have a spirit of timidity, but one of power and love and a sound mind. Overcome our fear and give us courage. In we pray. Amen.